Clear prop.
Star 73, Cherokee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Pleasantville. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Back with the ATC guys. We have Nick, Gio, and Clay back in the room with us today, and we are going to answer all of our listener questions that have been submitted. And some of these are local, some of these are just in general ATC questions that have come in, and I'm sure we'll spin off to some other dialogues. Clay, Gio, Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this one's pretty local, but it's one that I think I vacillated about when I was a young pilot. We live in a Delta airspace here at this airport, and it's a 2,000 foot shelf in Delta shelf here, where right above us is a big Bravo, and lots of planes turn right over this airport every day that weigh tons and tons, and you got to think there's some wake turbulence there. When we go out practicing, we can stair step up to 3,000, even 4,000 feet. In some cases, those planes look really, really close, and I would go out there and practice as a newly certified private pilot, thinking about what should I do next in my career, and I see this big plane flying right over top of me, and we're close. I know we're within 1,000 feet, right? What should pilots be thinking about when they depart airports around big Bravo airspaces like this? Clay, you probably see everybody on your scope. What's too close? What should we be thinking about? How should we be navigating out there? Any tips or tricks for pilots, GA pilots?
Yeah, I'm sure that most pilots are very aware of the Class Bravo airspace. I mean, that's the main thing right away, right? And then the other thing I'd say, I probably shouldn't say this because I'm not a pilot, but just because something is legal doesn't necessarily make it safe. And I know that's hard to say, and because everything we do should be completely safe. But for those listeners that fly in the Houston area, east of Lake Houston, when Intercontinental's west flow, we see it all the time where people just stay east of Lake Houston, north and south, and they'll be up at 1,900 feet. Yet the United jets are coming in at 2,000 feet, landing runway 27. So it's kind of a pain. We have to go. We have to change what we're doing. We have to maybe climb the guys back up. We've had to do that quite a few times. Climb the guys back up to at least 2,500 feet, or even move the guys out of the way completely if the guy looks like he might climb. So, flight following, if you're going to get that close to the Bravo, I know sometimes we push you down and you don't like it, but if you want to be that close to Bravo, flight following is a really good option. Otherwise, like I said, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's good to do.
Yeah, 100 feet sounds crazy. I think I heard Wally one time say he was with a pilot that was within 10 feet. He said, that's the landing gear.
Yeah.
Never mind wake turbulence. That's
Yep.
the landing gear that's going to connect. Gio, you're an instructor. You fly out of this airport a lot. What comes to mind for you when you think going west, and what would your separation thoughts be, and what guidance might you give to a new pilot that's like, hey, this is serious stuff?
Yeah, I think Clay brought up some really good points, but generally I like to give a buffer in there. The shelf is 2,000. I'll be going out there at 1,500 feet. I don't like to get too close to the Bravo just because they are using every inch of that airspace coming in. And, a lot of times you can even have an RA, or some sort of TCAS issue with the airliner. If you're climbing, they're descending at a certain rate. Even if you're going to miss it by 50 feet, it can still cause an issue. So I like to build in some space there, especially if you're a student pilot. Maybe you're looking at your checklist, you're looking away, you didn't trim the airplane properly. If you only gave yourself a 100-foot buffer, you can very quickly pop in and out of that airspace, where, they see it all day. They know they'll see that track get in there like, oh, you busted Bravo, which could be an issue, could be a non-issue. But I generally always tell pilots to give some sort of buffer. I don't have a hard number to give to everyone, but like I said, I personally will stay at least 500 feet underneath it, just as a precaution, give myself some breathing room.
And Wally, I know you're not an air traffic controller, but you fly some bigger planes into the Intercontinental sometimes, and some days you might be on a check ride out in the West Practice area. What what would you hope that someone would be doing if you were on the approaching the big aircraft and not the little one?
Oh yeah. 100 feet is not what I would hope for. Yeah, I think 500 feet is a good buffer.
Perfect. So that's the answer to your question. If you're going west, what should that separation be? Next to you, Nick, what's the worst time to ask for a request for something?
I would say, especially if you're IFR, the worst time to request something with a controller is when you first check on a new frequency. A lot of times, well, almost every time, when you talk to a new controller, you're still in the previous controller's airspace. They wrap up what they need from you and ship you to the next frequency a couple of minutes before you leave their airspace. So if you make a request and you're still in the other guy's airspace, I got to, tell you to hang on. I got to put everybody else basically on pause, get on the landline, call the previous controller. Sometimes it's a whole different facility. I might have to call Clay over at Houston Approach on the shout line. So just wait a couple minutes, get a feel for what's going on in the frequency, and if you can, unless you're getting rocked by some bad turbulence or it's safety related. I'm just talking about if you want to ask for a shortcut or something, you're much more likely to get it if you wait 3 or 4 minutes when you're on a new frequency. Interesting.
So I guess you say airspace, I'm thinking Bravo, Charlie, Delta, all that stuff. I'm still in like Trey's quadrant in the city. Is that what you're telling me? Like,
yeah, we have everything. We have everything divided up into sectors, both laterally and vertically. And pilots obviously have no way of knowing what airspace you're in, but we kind of define airspace a little differently. And so, yeah, I just mean you're in the previous controller's sector, basically, and they hand you off to a new controller before you leave their airspace.
And how would I, as a pilot, know, or is it important that I know it all? How much longer I'm going to be in that airspace? You said a couple minutes. Is that a good rule of thumb for a GA pilot?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I say most guys, depending on your speed, it's going to be different for a 777 as opposed to a Cessna 172, but I'd say a couple of minutes or so is a good rule of thumb. Okay. 2 to 4 minutes or so, something like that.
And you talked about sectors and vertical and horizontal, I guess, or laterally. What is that depicted anywhere? Should we care about that airspace, or is that not important to us pilots as it relates to Clay's sector being handed off to Geo's sector? Is that not important to a GA pilot?
I don't really know. I guess I'm again the wrong person to answer this, but I don't think so. I think the only time it really matters is if you're lost and you're looking for a frequency, I guess. But if you're already talking to us, I mean, we're going to work with each other, facility to facility to figure out where you need to be. So I don't think you have to worry about being lost as long as you're on some kind of frequency with us.
So one of the questions that came in over the interwebs was, what is a handoff? I think we've all been, I don't know whether we use it as slang or not. Do you guys consider it truly a handoff? And if so, if the terminology is a handoff, what happens when we're being handed off from one person to another?
Well, I'll take that one. So a handoff is us transferring the track of a data block and radio communications to another controller. And when we do this handoff, we are essentially making an agreement with the receiving controller saying, this airplane is going to be on the route that you see, and he's going to be at the altitude that you see. So whenever the receiving controller takes the handoff, which a lot of times they just put in each aircraft has a CID, which is just a unique code for it. They'll enter the CID, and they'll accept the handoff. At that point, if there's no traffic for you, if there's nothing pending for you, then I will go ahead and transfer radio communications to the next controller, and that'll be the process of a handoff. And that's why what Nick was mentioning earlier, why the worst time to make a request is whenever you switch frequencies, because I already agreed with the receiving controller that, hey, you're going to be at 10,000 feet. If you went 12,000 feet, well, now I have to go and renegotiate with that controller. It could be traffic, there could be something else in the way, a MOA or something that is active at 12,000. So we have to, in a word, negotiate, a handoff.
But once that handoff's been made, call it from Houston to Austin, control centers. Once Austin has me, I'm traveling westbound, then you guys can forget about me even though I'm in your airspace? Is that pretty much what happens?
No, we still we'll still watch for traffic. If you're in my airspace, we have to take responsibility for the airplane, but we're not going to transfer a data blocking radio communications unless all traffic situations are handled and you're clear to go into that airspace.
So another question came in very similar to this, traveling in VFR conditions, but I'm on an IFR flight plan, and I see pockets of precipitation in front of me. What can I legally, or what are you guys expecting me to do if I want to divert around that stuff? Should I tell you I want to divert around the stuff? Are you guys expecting me to? You surely see some of this precipitation. I guess what's the expectation by both pilot, and then what's your unwritten rules if there are? Or are the real rules?
The big thing is controllers. Anything on our scope, we have to tell you about. So we would do our best to tell you, moderate to extreme precipitation, 12 o'clock, 10 miles, 5 miles in diameter. So if we haven't called it to you, we probably don't see anything, but doesn't mean you certainly can't deviate if you want to. You would say, center, Niner Tango Charlie, looking for 10 degrees left for the weather at my 12 o'clock. And we'd say you're cleared to deviate up to 10 degrees left of course, but definitely tell us before you make that turn, because I could have parallel traffic at the same altitude right off your left-hand side that you don't know anything about, that you're just going to turn into. A lot of air carriers that come in from foreign countries, a lot of times I've noticed, for whatever reason, they might have different rules over there or whatever, but they'll just crank it hard 40 degrees left, and then as they're turning, let me know that they're deviating. And that has created some scary situations. Definitely not good to turn prior to asking.
Got you. So what you haven't done is flown with my wife, and if she sees a cloud 80,000 miles away, she wants me to divert around that cloud, even though we can go right through it, and she wants me to divert. So it could vary on your scope versus what my wife sees, but
correct.
We should just alert of a deviation.
Yep.
Get the clearance from you that it's okay, and then make those diversions.
And you're never going to get a question from a controller. The only thing is you may get resequenced. If you're in line number 3 to land and there's 3 real tight behind you, you may get spun around to, get a new spot in line for the airport if you're close. That's the only thing. But you're never going to get a controller that's going to give you a hard time about, or shouldn't anyway,
exactly,
about deviating, because if you end up hurting the airplane or hurting someone on board, that's going to come back on us if we didn't let you deviate. So
yeah, unless there's another aircraft out there, I don't see anybody ever saying no. But I do want to reiterate, it is a request. The deviation is a request still. We have to approve it first. Like you said, you gotta ask for it first. Don't ever turn. Or I've had people climb 500 feet. I'm like, I was just missing this cloud. All right, man, you can't do that. I could have had somebody above you, whatever. And everything is always a request. And most of the time we're going to say yes if we can.
And again, we're talking IFR there.
IFR.
Sure.
IFR.
Yep.
Yeah.
But a very similar question that came in is VFR, altitude your discretion, but there are rules around altitude. So I'm at 4,500 feet flying along. I see a cloud that I'm not going to get. I have to either climb or descend or something, because I don't want to go through it and be at fault myself for being an IMC when I shouldn't be. And you are a controller or center or whatever, it happens in Austin, it's happened to me before, says altitude your discretion. I have some rules I'm supposed to be following. What would be your expectations? You don't know what I see in front of me.
If a controller tells you altitude is your discretion, I don't care unless you're in the Bravo. If you're in the Bravo, I'm going to give you a hard altitude. I'm going to say, I need you at this altitude. Don't go out of that unless you tell me first. And then if there's traffic, let's say you're outside of the Bravo and you're just flying out there and I have traffic for you, I'm going to let you know, hey, I need you at or below 45 because of this crossing traffic. Once that traffic's gone, I'll say again, altitude your discretion now. I don't care anymore. So unless you get that hard altitude, no one cares.
And sometimes at center, we work so much IFR traffic, I'll say, advise any altitude changes. So in that case, if you were told something along those lines, you might want to say, hey, we got some clouds here. We're going to try to climb, descend. We may be a little bit left and right of course. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
And I guess, Gio, I hate to put you on the spot, but let's assume you're instructing me and I'm your student. I'm on a VFR fly following. I'm at 4,500 feet. I feel like I'm going to run into some clouds. He or she says out to your discretion. What are you going to recommend me to do? I'm even plus 500. Do I have to go all the way to 22.5? Do I go all the way to 65? What's the real world guidance on that when I really just feel like I need to go up about 750 feet, go over a little pocket of moisture in the air, and then come back down? What would you recommend or teach your students to do in that situation?
So I mean, obviously, first and foremost, you got to keep the regs in mind. You have to do your 500 feet below, 1,000 above, or 2,000 horizontally. So whatever you choose, you have to remember too, the altitudes, those are VFR cruising altitudes. If you're climbing or descending, those altitudes don't apply in those cases. So if you have to climb to miss it and then go underneath it, that's fine. But obviously, keep in mind efficiency. If you're going to Navasota and there's a cloud in front of you, it may be more efficient to go and start your descent early versus climbing up again, then descending. And also keep in mind, airspace around you. If you're going to climb, maybe you might clip the Class Bravo airspace. So I would say it's probably more of an art than a science, getting around clouds and weather. But it's definitely keep in mind where you're landing and airspace around you, because if you see a big scary cloud, your initial instinct could maybe put you in a worse situation with traffic and get you in someone else's airspace.
Perfect. I think your key word there was cruising altitudes, and if we're doing something to not specifically cruise, we're probably in the right spot. Remember the regs and just be smart about your decisions. So, a question from one of our listeners: squawk codes. I always seem to get the same squawk codes in the same areas of the state that I fly in. Do people have a certain set of codes they use, or how are squawk codes being assigned to my aircraft?
Depending on where you're going, like we talked about before, we have a NAS code and a local code. If I'm handing off to these guys, then it's got to be a NAS code. So there's going to be more information in there, so it comes up on their system over there. For us, it's going to be a different bank if it's staying in our airspace of Houston Tracon, that is. And so we don't need as much information there. That's really it, though. I mean, there's no major differences minus, having to put a little bit more information in as far as altitude. These guys want to know what altitude they're coming at them, type aircraft, all that stuff, where if it stays with us, all we need is a call sign, really. That's all I need, and we can get you going.
And I guess a similar question with ADSB, what's the future of squawk codes, and I guess maybe what's the purpose of a squawk code with ADSB being out there now, obviously in controlled airspace? What are we solving with a squawk code now that we all have ADSB in our aircraft?
Essentially, as far as I understand it, you're able to see it where us as air traffic control can see information about your aircraft, like the call sign and whatnot, even though you are not on any sort of flight plan. So in the old days, we'd see what was just called like a mode C intruder.
Right.
We might know your altitude and that you're kind of in the airspace around there doing some VFR stuff, but we don't know really anything else about you. Now we can see a call sign, and there might be a little more information too that the suits upstairs can look into. I don't know, but as far as us, we can just see a little bit about the aircraft, even though you're not on a flight plan.
So I'm still squawking 1200. I'm flying VFR, but you would know more about me now.
Yep.
And if I was out in uncontrolled airspace, I might have some information that others might get to see as well.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
This comes from maybe a student, maybe an instructor. I'm not sure. It says, how do you feel about student readbacks? And do you wish they were longer or shorter? And what more information is really important for students to read back to you?
Definitely any control instruction, I'd say, is very important. An altitude or route, anything like that. Altimeters, I don't know. I've heard both on that.
That's a great point, because I hear that one all the time.
Yeah.
They you check in with someone and they say, great, College Station altimeter 299 and it feels like you should respond.
And I think I do when I'm flying. I just say 9 or 2, 9 or Tango Charlie. Just give them something, because it feels like you should have a read back there. But I don't believe that's required necessarily. Okay. Gio, you want to expand on that a little?
I personally, I appreciate it if you check in, say, hey, this is American 123 descending via the Suzy 4 arrival, and I read back American 123 Houston Center, altimeter 29903. If you read back 903 American 123, that just, for me, that kind of lets me know, okay, yeah, he heard it. But again, this is just a preference. It's not, there's no rules, but as far as like readbacks go, generally, the old rule of thumb is reading back the numbers. If you hear a clear 2, taxi 2, those you're going to want to read back. And I think the biggest one too is attaching your call sign to it. It's an easy one to forget, but it's the number one thing you'll see controllers getting on pilots with is not using their call signs when they're talking. One thing I'll hear is, okay, hey, I'm requesting lower. Okay, who is requesting lower? Okay, it's November 1234. Okay, thank you. So definitely whatever you read back, attach your call sign to it, because it's very important, and it can cause some issues if someone else has a similar sounding call sign, which sometimes it's hard to believe, but there can be very, very similar sounding call signs out there, where one person can read it back and can cause a whole set of issues.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question that might cause some controversy here that was not on our list of questions. But isn't it really cool just to go click, like that way y'all know I've heard and answered everything?
I know.
Be honest.
When I'm working,
click good enough.
When I'm working and I hear a pilot do that, I think that guy is awesome. I wish I was that guy. No, I don't know. I mean, again, with an altimeter or something like that, it's better than nothing, I guess. I appreciate, and when we're calling weather too, that's really important for us. We've had that beaten into us as controllers that we have to let pilots know about the weather. So give us some sort of acknowledgement. You know, the mic click is fine. Just that you got the information that we threw out there. It's fine.
Okay. And then I guess to that mic click, I thought we'd have more discussion there.
Okay, Clay, what do you think about the mic click? I don't know.
You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everybody does it. We're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away tomorrow. Okay. No worries. What about, I guess I'll call it humor on the radio? We fly a lot. We some of it's monotonous if we're flight training and we're doing our stuff. What about the humor on the radio? I think I hear it a lot on the ground where we'll say I'm ready to go, or they say something cute like that, right? Ready to go see grandma, grandpa. What are your thoughts on people doing things that aren't, I guess, the right or official way to do them?
Let's go back to the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. If the line's long and that guy looks pissed off and exhausted and it's the end of his 10-hour shift, are you going to want to mess with him? It's probably not an appropriate time. You're probably just going to stick to your order, right? Yeah. I'd say that's my inclination, is to say something like that. If it's really slow, it's late at night. Hey, how you doing? How's your day going, man? Sure, that's fine. We can have a little conversation. If we're busy, it's weather related and it's all business. Know your audience.
Yeah, sometimes when I land and you exit, you're supposed to contact ground, have a good day. I want to tell them thanks, have a good day too, but then I'm thinking this is wasting radio time at a very busy airport. What should I do? Because if I don't say thank you or have a good day, I know they know who I am, and then they're going to, well, was Bobby mad at me? I'm obviously an anxiety wreck when it comes to this.
One thing I will say is one thing that when I'm working with students, what I talk about is if you're going to fly internationally, what you have to realize is that you're very likely going to be speaking to a controller whose native language is not English. And he or she may have a very limited command of the English language, and it's aviation related. So talking in slang may not be good, because they may, quite frankly, not understand what you're saying. And sometimes when we're over the ocean, we're not even actually talking to controllers. We're talking to a company that relays to controllers. We may be talking to a clerk, and they're just putting numbers down on a spreadsheet and then relaying them to the controllers. So that's why from the get-go, I try to get people to say we're not climbing to 10,000, we're climbing to 10,000, and just use the terminology, the phraseology exactly right. And if you can start that from day one, it just seems to be a lot better.
Could make a big deal one day for sure.
And the other thing is, a lot of times at a tower, you're right next to the transmitter. So you're usually around the air, like here at Hooks, you have a pretty good connection, I guess, a good signal with the controller.
Have you flown all of our training?
True. But in the center environment, sometimes we're talking to people who are hundreds of miles away, literally from the transmitter, and they're descending in the low altitude, and the reception's getting even worse. And a lot of that phraseology is made to cut through the really bad reception and get the important stuff across. So,
gotcha. So, not necessarily a question, but something, Nick, you and I have spoken about specifically, and that is that not all controllers are pilots, and maybe not all controllers, no matter what phraseology you use, will understand if you're having a problem.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what would it mean if I said I have a vacuum system that's not working? That might not mean the same thing to every controller.
Oh yeah, a lot of us are airplane geeks, but or want to be pilots, I guess. But a lot of controllers, most I'd say, a good 95% ballpark, are not pilots. So if you start going on and on about your vacuum system failure and you don't think your directional gyros, spinning properly, I don't know, that's going to mean nothing to most people. Tell us what you need, assume you're talking to somebody that doesn't know anything about airplanes. I need the nearest airport immediately. I'm having some sort of flight control issue. I need to put this thing on the ground. What's your nearest airport? Be direct, and let us know what you need. And also, don't ever hesitate to let us know that there is an issue going on. I've seen a lot of different shows. Bobby and I were talking. We watch air disasters. How many people have flown the plane into the ground because they refused to acknowledge that there was an issue and confront it or communicate it to the controller? Forget being embarrassed. You don't have as much fuel as you thought you did. Forget about all that. Be safe. Communicate what's going on with the controller and be direct about what you need.
Yeah, I think it would be so sad if anybody ever got hurt because they didn't declare something, right? I mean, I think that's important. But I think the conversation we've had in the past about people not knowing what all these instruments might be doing for you to help navigate, you just need to say, I have a navigation problem. I need real help. Help me turn. All I have left is a compass, something. And then I think there's this thing that I worry about. I've got an ego. I'm sure we all have egos of varying levels. That ego should not ever let you get hurt, right? So you got to speak up. You got to scream and yell. I got real issues, right? You're not going to think any less of a guy who says, hey, I'm losing everything. I need your help. You're just going to want to be that service-oriented team member to help them.
That's
right,
what
Clay?
we're here for. Yeah.
That's right. So you talk about fuel. Wally, how important is fuel? We
Well, it's one of the top 5 things. And number 1 is fuel. Number 2 is, fuel. Looking at my notes. Number 3 is fuel. Number 4 is fuel. And number 5 is fuel. It's the one thing an airplane can't fly without. We can fly without electricity. To an extent, we can fly without an engine. We're going to glide somewhere. And if we got more than one engine, we can fly maybe a little bit longer. But fuel is really, really important.
And so, in all these GA aircraft, fuel gauges, we can't trust them. We got to all look. If you had someone call up and just tell you they didn't know, I need help. Again, no harm, no foul. None of you are going to hold it against them. We're not going to get reported to anyone. You're going to help us through the situation, and we're going to deal with anything else tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
A transition from that would be, we all like to hear about y'all's scary moments. Give us a little bit of insight into some scary controller pilot moments or something that you can share with us that might help us all be a little bit smarter or better pilots or safer pilots in the future. We'll start with you, Gio.
Yeah, so this was maybe 2 years ago, but I had an aircraft. It was a turboprop Piper Malibu, I believe, and he was climbing into high altitude. I think his final cruising altitude was 28,000 feet. And he checks on from us from Fort Worth, climbing out of, I think he said 15,000 feet for his assigned altitude of 28,000 feet. Well, for us, it's pretty important that we get that altitude that you're leaving, especially because he was coming from a different facility. To us, I have to verify his mode C. Well, what I saw on my side was 23,000 feet. And he said he was at 15,000 feet. So I said, okay, that's weird. And I said, okay, just verify you're climbing you're out of level 230. It was negative. I'm showing 15,000 feet. Well, after a few other small communications, he quickly becomes disoriented. And he loses all faith in his instruments. And I see his aircraft go from, on my side, I saw 23,000 feet. Down to 9,000 feet in probably less than 2 minutes. And during that time, for us, if an airplane does something that the computer does not think it should be doing, it X's out. There's X's next to it, and I see the X's come out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what this guy's doing, but he's in trouble. Well, during that time frame where I'm trying to get a hold of him, he switched to guard frequency, which is, what a lot of us are taught during emergency, 1 to 1.5. Well, when he did that, he was now talking with a controller in Laredo. And my airspace is pretty much directly over the Austin area. And now this controller is trying to figure out, okay, where is he at? What's going on? And they had to play a game of telephone to get him back to me because he switched frequencies. And then I had to kind of quickly tell him, hey, stop your descent, because by the time that he came back to me, he was just about at 9,000 feet in someone else's airspace. My airspace ended at 13,000 feet where he's at. So I had to coordinate with other controllers, and he had to miss another airplane that was very close to him. So from out of that, it's pretty important to know that, airspace is vertical and laterally. But in an emergency, you don't have to switch to 121.5. If you're already talking to your traffic controller, if your radar identified, stay with who you are, because it's the most helpful person you can talk to. And not all of us have 121.5 outer sectors. I don't know how they decide who gets it, but my whole area, all the sectors I work, we don't have 121.5. So I wasn't able to talk to that pilot. But to kind of wrap it up here, I eventually had a pilot just say, hey, November 1, 2, 3, 4, check your GPS altitude. And I guess he went on 4 flight, or maybe on his 430 or whatever he had in there, and he saw that it was showing about 9,000 feet. Well, eventually the pilot got reoriented and was able to stop his descent. And funny enough, this guy, he wanted to truck onto his destination. I was like, man, you don't
clear us back to 28,000 feet, please?
Yeah, and he was fine after a few moments of sheer terror for him, where he was ready to go on. I mean, I guess more power to him, but I mean, I would want to get on the ground for a little bit, take a breath, maybe get some water before I go out again, and figure out what was going on.
Again, if my wife was in that aircraft, we would not be flying again for years. Clay, give us a story that we can all hopefully learn from or relate to in your time.
I don't, there's a lot of stories, but I mean, any controller's been around for a while. They've seen it all. They've seen bird strikes. They've seen military jets flaming out. They've seen, people thinking they had more fuel than they did. Probably one of the ones that got me the most was icing issue when I worked out in Northern California of a general aviation aircraft. Worked out. Got him over the coast, got him lower, and everything started working out for him and continued where he was going. But I think it's, I never get stressed out. I don't get scared when I'm on the radio, even if somebody says he has an emergency. Because normally the pilot's voice is smooth and you can tell he's still in control, he's still in command. But when that pilot's voice starts getting frantic and you can tell that there's something really serious, that's whenever, to me, it's like, okay. I've been in quite a few of those where it's like, this guy, he's not talking like he was 3 minutes ago. Something's wrong, and it's probably pretty bad. And that's when my whole attention goes to it, and we kind of kick everybody else out. You might have heard it sometimes flying. If there's an emergency, we'll kick people out. We'll start transferring people to other sectors, and I'll concentrate just on you.
Well, I'm sure we've all watched a YouTube video or listened to something of someone who's gone from, hey, can you tell me something, to the cracking in the voice. It's imminent. There's real danger there.
Absolutely.
I think it would scare me more to hear someone who was trying to be calm, but also voice was cracking, almost trying to play it off. And that's, I think, what scares me the most, is I don't want anybody's ego to get the better of them and try to play cool. Nick, I'm sure you too have something that we can all learn from. Give us a little example of something that you've been involved with.
Yeah, we at the center, we all monitor guard. If you have it at your sector, you're supposed to have it kind of on the speaker there, just listening. And most of what you hear on guard is either people making Chewbacca noises for some reason. I don't know why that's a thing, but I seem to hear that every day. To just ELTs.
I was going to try, but I would not do it justice. So I won't even give it a go.
Is that you, Bobby, in your 182 doing that?
No.
Stop it. No, or it's just people, testing their ELTs at the top of the hour or whatever. It's very rarely do you hear anything. It's an actual call for help. But one night I was working kind of late and heard a gentleman call up, and he was in the middle of, I think he said he was near Hammond, Louisiana. And he had lost all his electrical, and he was, kind of getting disoriented or lost or something. I didn't get the full picture, but I realized he needed help, and I half waited for somebody else to respond because I figured somebody else was probably already talking to him. I wasn't going to get involved, and I heard him call again, and I hit the button to respond on guard, and sure enough, he responded to me, and I was like, holy crap, this guy really needs help. And we got him a frequency. The supervisor came over, and another controller came over who was a pilot, and we got him a frequency for, I think it was Baton Rouge approach or something, and ended up getting him, I think at that point, I believe he was on his handheld backup radio or something. I don't know what exactly was going on, but we got him a frequency, got him in touch with everything, and I ended up leaving my number for him at the FBO at Baton Rouge, and he called me the next day, and we had a long chat about what had happened, and
Nice.
He was grateful that we helped out. But yeah.
So Wally and I have done multiple shows now on emergencies or just the context of emergencies, and they get a lot of listens and downloads. One question that I think many pilots still want to know, if there's some special secret sauce to declaring an emergency. What would you three gentlemen, all listening to radios, all having emergencies declared, what would you recommend for someone if they've got the wherewithal? How should they declare an emergency?
I would say, well, first of all, number one is don't hesitate to declare an emergency. There's not anything that's going to happen to you. If you think you're in an emergency situation, declare the emergency. And a lot of times the controller, we were talking earlier too, the controller will declare one for you and you won't even know it. If you say you've got if you say you have a flight control issue going on and you're weaving left and right of course, but you're hesitant to declare an emergency, guess what? One's already been declared for you and help is going to be waiting for you on the runway. But no, I would say the number one thing when you declare an emergency is just be very clear about what you need. Be concise. Don't go on and on and on. And I think we all know aviate, navigate, communicate. Your most important, the thing you have to do there is fly your airplane. When you get a sec, tell us what's going on and tell us how we can help. And that's what we're going to do.
And then I guess we'll leave this final question as we wrap up. We'll almost pretend that this person's at their destination after a long cross country of IFR. They're landing at an uncontrolled airport, and they decide to not close their IFR flight plan. Clay, what really happens in the real world? Like, nothing's really going to happen, right? I got 4 flight. Y'all see me land. Everything's good.
Yeah, well, you're going to make at least one controller mad and maybe possibly a sheriff as well. So whenever you land and, or right before you land, I should say, and we switch you over to CTAP and we ask you to, please cancel as soon as you possibly can, and you either choose not to, forget to, whatever, we basically shut that airport down. If there's somebody there that's available that we can call at the airport and then go check on you, we will do that. If not, the sheriff's going to come looking for you. We'll get your information off the internet. We'll call you at home. We'll call you on your cell phone, whatever phone number we got. We'll figure out where you are, and just know that your buddy's on the ground, your buddy's in there. They can't get in that airport until you give us a call. So always
this is not
remember.
A recommendation to let them call you so they can help you close. You need to close
Yes.
your flight plan out.
We will find you.
And off radio, we were talking a little bit about the phone number that we put in our flight plan, how valuable that really can be. I think early on, I was taught to put the FBO I was leaving's phone number in there. Obviously, I put my cell phone number in there now. You guys mentioned sat phone. Really and truly, you're recommending. I think I heard you recommend your whatever phone number they might be able to get you in the air, even if it's via text. Any text stories y'all have that you could share with us?
Yeah,
as it relates to the phone number.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, having your phone number in the remarks helps. We can pull it up at our sector pretty easily. Now, there is for us, we have something called the Archie Awards, which is generally a controller that went above and beyond to help an aircraft in distress, or they did some sort of excellent service. And you at home can go look up ZFW, which is Fort Worth Center Archie Award, where they had a pilot who lost radio communications, and the controller was able to get his number, and they were able to text him information. There's VFR weather north of you, and we're going to turn on the pilot control lighting. They were able to text him just because he had his number in there. And I know Nick has talked about other times where he's able to get a hold of airplanes via sat phone if they have it on there, because he deals with aircraft over the ocean where the radios may not be as good. So there's definitely a lot of ways that having your phone number in there can help.
So make sure you're doing everything you can to get help if you ever need help. Anything to close with there, Nick?
Oh yeah, just about that phone number too. It could be another way to get a hold of you on the ground. If you're on the way home, driving home, or you're already home and you have no idea there's 5 aircraft in a holding pattern because you shut the airport down, we could use that cell phone number to call you real quick and just say, "Hey, Bobby, you on the ground? Cancel IFR? Okay, great, sounds good."
Man, I hope I never get that phone call. I really do. I hope I never get that phone call. Gentlemen, thanks for coming back and joining the show again. Wally, anything you'd like to add as we wrap this episode up?
No, it's all good.
All right. As always, thanks to these 3 gentlemen, and fly safe and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.